Now that it's recording. Brilliant. So just welcoming everybody to our weekly leadership roundtable, recognizing that what we're doing is every single week we're taking a deep dive, right? We're taking a deep dive into an aspect that supports us accelerating success through humanizing transformation. And that at any given week can mean working on ourselves, working with our teams, working with the structure and design and delivery of transformation at a systems level. And today is really about working on ourselves, and we're talking about attention management, which is coined as the modern leader's version of time management, and I think it's a really exciting subject. Before I go into today's session, what I do want to do though is just share with everybody this thought. The idea of attention and attention management has just blown, it's just grown exponentially. I don't know whether I can say blown out of all proportion or not, but if you think about brands and marketing and social media, they're all, deploying very smart technical attention management strategies, which are about taking our attention away. So when you're thinking about brands and marketing and social media, that's about people trying to control our attention. What we're talking about today is about taking control back so that we are in control of our attention. So there's two little rubs going on in the external kind of macro view of attention management. So the element that we're focusing on is how we, our own attention management and we can take control of that. And also, it is a pretty big subject because it has different dimensions. And for that reason, today is overview. So if there's anything that you hear in today that you go, it's something that takes my fancy and my interest, then please do let me know. And I'll hang around beyond the 45 minutes for a few moments just to answer anything that somebody might have that they want to talk to me about on a one-to-one basis. Okay, so attention management. What is it all about? Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of an understanding of what it is, but I also, because I want these roundtables to be actionable so that we are really talking about our own experiences and what we might be able to do after session. And we'll talk about developing it as well before we go into open roundtable discussion. So attention management. Why do we need attention management? I've just got a little question here and a little bit of a thought experiment. If you go down the list that you see on this slide, I ask you, would you say yes to one of them? Could you say yes to two of them? Could you say yes to three of them? Could you say yes to four or more? Yeah. Now, in a basic attention management assessment, if you are anywhere from 3+, attention management as a focus area for your growth development, personal growth development is definitely a priority. So if you did say yes to, or can say yes to 3 or more of the things that are on here, then attention management is definitely something for you. I just want to pop one little note. The Magpie Mindset, that is basically, when we feel that we're flitting from one thing to the other, there's so much complexity around us in our system that it's like at any given moment, Jiminy Cricket, something comes through the door, something comes through the email, you're trying to do something and you're off in a million directions. And there's this beautiful visual that Richard Woods uses in his MDS, in his $1 Million Sprint, and he talks to why would you take one step in one direction and then another step in another direction and take 6 steps, one step in 6 different directions instead of 6 steps in the same direction? Because if you take 1 step in 6 different directions, at the end of it, you've only stepped forward 1 step. But if you take 6 steps in the same direction, you've gained ground and progress. So, it's the whole concept of really thinking about attention. So let's think about it a little bit differently. The one thing that is so important for each and every one of us to recognize is it doesn't matter how much strength and pressure we feel from the conditions and environment around us. We do have choice, and we can take control of where we place our attention, what we place our attention on, how we manage our attention. And for anyone that has learned how to ski, you will know that in your first few skiing lessons, what do they say to you? Don't look at the tree, because what happens? You ski straight into it. And it's absolutely true to us with attention. Wherever we look is where we go. Wherever we place our focus, our priority is where we go. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're doing that in the right way and toward the right direction. So that is really important for us, even when we feel the weakest in terms of control. Always think that we have a choice to take control back. There's three people really that are great people to follow in the world of attention management. The most prolific is Maura Thomas, and she gives this beautiful definition of attention management that you can see in front of you here. It offers the ability to consciously direct our attention in any given moment, allows us to be more proactive rather than reactive, to respond rather than to react. It allows us to maintain control instead of relinquishing it to others, knowing that those brands, those consumer brands out there are vying for our attention all the time. And it allows us to really, take overall control and attention of our lives back. And that's so incredibly important. It does have a lot to do with productivity, but I think it gives attention management a disservice if we think it's only about productivity. So it's about a lot more than that. So Maura Thomas, I would say, is the number one person to follow. You can also have a look at some of the work of Adam Grant and Daniel Pink, because they both also talk about attention management, and they have their own philosophies and thoughts and theories about it. But for the sake of today, it's the thoughts, philosophies, and theories as assigned by Mel. So Mel Ross. So I've simplified the work of these three people, and I've also summarized the work that we enter into in our mentoring and coaching with leaders and transformation leaders and organizations into this simple formula: focus plus attention plus energy equals attention. Focus plus energy equals attention. And if we can remember that, we can pop that little formula onto a post-it note and make sure that it is there for us to visibly see during the day, then it will really, really help us to achieve and develop attention. And the key thing is understanding what I mean by focus and understanding what I mean by attention. So energy. So let's have a look at each one of them in singularity. So focus. You see, I need my coffee today, don't I? When we talk about focus, we talk about three elements. We talk about priority. How do we prioritize? Who do we prioritize? We talk about presence, and we talk about productivity. Now, if we can harness and develop what we're prioritizing, if we can harness and develop presence, and if we can harness and develop our productivity and enhance our effectiveness and productivity, then our ability to focus increases naturally, organically as a result, which is brilliant. And what a lovely little quote from Adam Grant here: prioritize the people and projects that matter, and it won't matter how long anything takes. So, it's a great quote that says, attention is where we ought to be placing our focus, and then time just strips away. And it's really interesting when I start working with leadership groups, teams, or individual leaders, and we talk about attention management. I ask some questions about how they plan their week, how they plan their professional life, how they manage their leadership practice. And it's interesting how many of them seem to revolve their leadership practice around the universe of their calendar. How many of us manage our leadership practice around the universe called the Outlook or the Gmail calendar. It's interesting, isn't it? And what that is doing is that's setting you up for a fall, because what that is basically, taking you down the path of is how much time am I going to give to A, B, C, or D? So, myself, to others, the task, the project, etc., etc. So it's trying to think about alternative ways. So focus. The first element of focus is prioritization. And just a quick question: has anybody ever used the Eisenhower matrix? I mean, Jiminy Cricket, it's been around for so long because it is Eisenhower himself that created it, but it is so simple, it is so smart, and it is so applicable to the world of digital data disruption and design that we're living in. It's absolutely fantastic. And the Eisenhower matrix is a very, very easy way for us to start transitioning our attention and our focus. Is really starting to understand where we're putting our priority. And it's understanding what is urgent, what is not urgent, understanding what is important and what is not important. When we first think about this, what we will say is, everything is urgent at the moment because you don't understand it. If my boss comes in from left field and says, I need you to do this now, that's urgent. But at the same time, when they came in and knocked on my door or sent me that email, I was working on something that already was urgent because the deadline is today. So how am I going to be able to disseminate one task from another, or prioritize what comes into me in terms of people asking me to do things? This is a great way to understand it. And I think it's really important for us to get to grips with the difference between what is urgent and what is important. Because what is urgent really is something that has to happen now. And if it doesn't, then there are going to be repercussions. What is important is something that you are working on that's probably got a little bit of longitudinal element to it, so that you know that you can plan a little bit more about it. And then when you're thinking about that, that means that if it's urgent, it is something that you have to do now. If it is not urgent but important, then it's something that you can schedule. If it's urgent and not important in terms of your own purpose and prioritization, then could it be something that you can delegate? If it's not urgent or not important, then it's something that you just shouldn't be doing. And it's quite interesting how simple the Eisenhower matrix is. And when people think about their tasks and what they're doing and the time that they spend with other people in the week, they suddenly think, I don't actually need that meeting that's in the diary. I've become familiar with that meeting and I just turn up to it. But actually, it's neither urgent nor important. There could be another way that we can do it. So I think one of the things about the Eisenhower matrix to take into consideration is this: bringing it up into the 21st century, you probably want to not necessarily think about delegate and delete. You probably want to think about automating. Is there a way that you can automate something rather than perhaps delegating it out to somebody? Is there a way that you can automate something rather than deleting it, or indeed make it transparent? Because if you can automate it, it might make it transparent for others to see, and all of a sudden you don't need it. So really, really important. There's another element as well, I think, which is in modern times when we're thinking about humanizing transformation, delegating something to a person is one thing, but disseminating something is another way that we can work as a modern leader. And what I mean by disseminating something is democratizing it, is cutting it down and divvying it out to different people. So that's another way of thinking about delegation in a modern world. So the Eisenhower matrix, just giving it a bit of a zhuzh and bringing it into the 21st century is really something vitally important that we should be considering. And the next element for focus is presence. A beautiful picture that I've put in front of us here on the slide. And, we've already talked about this in an earlier weekly roundtable. So, I'd urge everybody to go back to the replays. But presence is got two lenses. It's being present, how am I able to put to one side the stuff that's going on in my brain, the stuff that's going on in my heart, the stuff that's going on around my computer? How can I turn that off? How can I turn that down? How can I pop it to one side so that what I'm focusing on is the moment of now, right here, right now, me with you guys being present, not what I'm doing at 9 o'clock, not what I was thinking about earlier on, and certainly not what I'm going to make for supper. So it's being present in the moment. And then the other lens of presence, certainly for us in the world of humanizing transformation and modern leadership, is that sense of having presence, that sense of gravitas, that sense of, I guess, attraction or charisma. Now, wouldn't, many of us might think, oh, that's not for me. It sounds as if it's kind of like something a little bit like, Hollywood, TikTok, or standing on a stage in front of 1,000 people. No, it's poppycock. Each and every individual should have the time and the space to explore their own sense of presence in order for them to bring it to the table. And what I mean by that is, what's unique about me? What are the strengths that I have that I can bring as value contribution? That's super important. So thinking about the two lenses of presence alongside managing our priorities are two really great ways to build focus. And by the way, when I'm saying all of this, we can apply this to ourselves, which is what today's focus is, a weekly roundtable, but you can equally apply this to a project or a program. And it's great when you do. Now, the final one for focus, we've talked a little bit about priority, we've talked about presence. The next one is productivity. And this is the easiest one. This is the tangible bit of attention management, right? In terms of taking control and managing it and developing it. It's about productivity. How can we increase our productivity? And there's a tangible, easy way to think about it, which is in the lovely 3-step release, or automate and augment. So look at our productivity at the moment. What are we outputting? What are we achieving? And thinking, what can we release? What can we automate? And equally, what am I doing that if I was able to add data to it, support from another human being to it, or maybe some technological zhuzh, could I augment it? Could I make something that is important? Could I make it into a superpower? So could I really bolster it up and boost it up? Thinking about people, thinking about things, thinking about technology, thinking about data to support it. So augmentation is a really important point because it's very, very modern, and it's certainly a part of transformation. There's a way of thinking about productivity that you can quickly do. So thinking about your week, thinking about the tasks that you've got, thinking about the stuff that you're working on in terms of short and medium term is this. If tasks that you're doing can be described as efficient, you ought to be giving it to a machine. There's no reason in 2022 that anything that we're doing that is efficient, and how we define efficient and describe efficiency is this. Is it repeatable? Is it task or transactional orientated? Is it consistent? Is there consistency about it? And if you can say yes to any one of those three things, not all of them, the likelihood is that that task is efficient, which means that you could actually automate it. And in your own tiny little habits of productivity and the behaviors, the ways of working that you have in your daily life, there'll be lots of areas of efficiency that you should be automating, thinking about your emailing, thinking about your calendar, thinking about how you manage your time, thinking about your working out loud in terms of how you share information and data with others. So many elements of that, reporting, all of that kind of stuff. Anything that's efficient, how can you automate it? Because that's exactly what you ought to be doing. And then what you're doing is buying back time. And buying back time means that you can spend more time on the things that are inefficient. And inefficiency is really those things that have got complexity around them, those things that are about creativity, those things that are about innovation, those things that are about empathy, the real humanity in the workplace, which is really one of the golden nuggets of humanizing transformation. So we want to be spending more and more and more of our time as transformational leaders and modern leaders in the inefficient space, and passing off efficiency, not to another human as we would have done in the fourth industrial revolution. We want to pass it off to machine. So productivity is a really cool space to be looking at, and there's so many techniques. Honestly, you know, there's no point me just giving you a list of things that you could do to increase the productivity of your day. You Google it, you will find them. There are so many people talking about how we can hack productivity and our work life on Google. So I would say just definitely go there. So that's focus in terms of prioritization, presence, and productivity. So thinking about how we can do that. The other element of the formula toward attention management is energy. And this is something that isn't talked about as much, but is incredibly emergent. And can I say this? It's got probably more scientific backing to it than the focus work. Because when you look at neuroscience, when you look at the work and research that's coming out of, neuroscience and medical research and positive psychology, the factual work and use cases we've got on mind, body, heart, and soul, in order to manage our energy as modern leaders and to support the energy of our human systems, be that a team, a service area, or a entire organization, heaps. And yet we're not doing it. Why? Because you've got words in here that are a little bit fluffy. You know, you talk to somebody that might be a little bit traditionally minded about energy management, or mind, or body, or heart, or goodness gracious, soul. But these things are starting to bubble up into the work environment, which I actually think is an absolutely fantastic thing. I'm just going to go through each one of them really briefly with you. In terms of the first one, the mind, our mind has 3 states. And these are the 3 states that our mind is in at any given moment. We're either in a moment of daydreaming, we're either in a state of distraction, or we're in a state of focus. Now, the wonderful Tom Evans would say to us, if he was here today, he'd say, you cannot think 2 thoughts at the same time. You can only have 1 thought at any given moment. So you're either going to be in focus, in distraction, or in daydreaming. So what I'd like to kind of ask everybody to do over the next week is, perhaps in your journaling, start to reflect back on your day. How much of my day was in daydream? How much of my day was in distraction? How much of my day was in focus? And then say to yourself, when I was in daydreaming, was it positive daydreaming, or was it just I was zoning out because of lack of control and overwhelm around me? Distraction, was it positive and valuable distraction, or was it that I was actually the slave to all of those things in the conditions and environment around me that are vying for my focus? They'd taken my focus away and made me distracted. And equally, how much time I was in focus. These 3 brain states are fantastic when you start playing around with them in terms of when they're positive and when they actually are not necessarily serving you that well. So daydreaming, distraction, and focus are the real 3 brain states. So we don't always want to be in focus. If we were in focus all the time, we'd be absolutely burnt out, right? We would just, we need daydreaming for ideation and brainstorming. We need distraction, because distraction allows us to go and take a balcony view. We're taking ourselves out of the focus on that. It's like you're writing a report, or you're writing a strategy, and it's just like, why aren't the words coming to me? I kind of know in my brain what I want, but as soon as I start to put the words onto paper, it's just not coming. That's a perfect moment for you to go, stop, balcony, just distract yourself with something. Really, really cool thing to do. And then go back into it. And a lovely little way to use distraction to come back into something when you feel that you've got a vision in your mind, but you just don't seem to be able to bring it to manifest it into reality if you're writing it down or trying to create a design for a product, a service, or a transformation or a plan, is this: go and pick a book on a shelf and open the book onto a random page and pick 5 words from that page randomly and pop them down on a piece of paper, and then associate those 5 words with what's in your mind. It is a fantastic brain trick. Absolutely brilliant brain trick. Try it. Let me know how you get on. I use it a lot. It allows me to go out and all of a sudden I'm straight back in and I've got a different lens. It's fantastic. So those are the 3 brain states. But that's not all, is it? Because I said energy is about 4 elements. It's the holistic human that we are. It's mind, body, heart, and soul. So when we're thinking about body, heart, and soul, what are we thinking about? Our body, it is important for us to really think about how we are serving our body in terms of nutrition, in terms of sleep hygiene, in terms of well-being generally. So we really want to make sure that there are considerations in our time to this. And, you know, I work with a lot of leaders, you guys know that, and the amount of leaders that say to me, I really support well-being. I think well-being is incredibly important and I encourage well-being across my team. And then at 11 o'clock at night, they're still emailing out. So there's a real role modeling element to the energy element, right? It is the mind, body, heart, and soul. We have got to be role modeling it. You have to serve yourself before you serve others. Do not think that you know, for you to say to your team, look after yourselves, make sure you're managing your well-being, or even in a one-to-one. You know, if you're doing a one-to-one with some of your teams, and you know, you're saying, so how's your well-being today? You know, how are you going on managing that? And they're sitting there going, they're not going to resonate with you. So you need to be role modeling that out. It's really, really important. In terms of heart, this is where everything around positive psychology comes into play. And, you know, to be healthy in heart is really to mean that we're healthy in our emotions. So we've got emotional stability and we are able to manage our emotions and we're able to keep our emotions on the positive side of the spectrum. We don't want to go to 0 and we certainly don't want to go to minus. And, you know, from a positive psychology perspective, there are some lovely little tricks. Think about our language. Thinking about positive language makes a huge difference. Gratitude. Seriously, am I using the word gratitude in a leadership roundtable? You're damn right I am. Because to be grateful for something means that if we're worried or if we're in fear of something, that is a thought and brain state. As soon as you make yourself grateful or think about being grateful for something, you can move into a positive brain state. So these are tricks as well as techniques. So happiness in terms of emotion management, happiness in terms of positive psychology, super, super important. And the final element of energy is soul and, you know, or spirit, or, you know, the deeper inner self that who we are. If you have not explored your own why, your own purpose for being in the role you're in the life that you are leading, it's really time to do that. It's important for us all to have some sort of reflection and understanding and clarity, if not journey commitment toward purpose in our life. Because as soon as you've got that, you're on your way to a moonshot. And as soon as you've got a moonshot, it means that you've got that navigation. So you're 6 steps in the right direction and not necessarily six steps in different directions. It's so incredibly important. So that is a little bit on the 2 key elements that create attention. It is what we are focusing on and how. It is the development and the commitment to our energy in terms of mind, body, heart, and soul. And if we're looking at those 2 things, we know that we are in control and we are managing our attention. But I guess the thing is how, right? So all I want to do now for a few moments is just talk to you about the 3 things that we do that when we're working with teams. And this is great for transformation, when especially in practice teams, you know, operational teams that are working on the design and the delivery of transformation, let alone the users that are impacted by our projects and programs. First and foremost is know your why. Every single member of the team, including you, needs to understand why they are in that team, why they are doing it. So knowing our why is so incredibly important as a first step towards being able to manage and control and develop our attention. The next thing is take back control, because you can guarantee that when you do an attention management assessment, you will see that you are lacking control in all of the areas and dimensions of it. So what you want to do is you want to take back that control. You want to help your teams take back control of what they can attend to and what they should be attending to. Boy, does that give courage? Does that give freedom? Does that liberate teams when you're working with them? Because they're taking back control. They feel so much more a part of something when they are taking back control and you're supporting them in doing that. So incredibly important. And once we've taken back control, then we can really start shifting. And that is back to that phrase that I always repeat, and I will continue to repeat: practice makes progress. Practice does not make perfect. So it's about real consistency and repetition. So knowing our why, taking back control, and practice makes perfect. If we can do that ourselves, specific to focus and energy, we are there. We're on the way to attention management. If we can do that with our teams that are working on projects and programs of transformation, what an amazing developmental focus and program and exercise to be doing with them. 3 steps. So starting with why, knowing your why is so incredibly important. We have a little worksheet and it's called a brand triangle. Some of you have actually been have had access to it and worked on it. It is brilliant. The brand triangle takes you through different elements. And one thing that it does right at the very start is it asks you to go out and speak to people in your personal life and your professional life to give you words or short phrases to describe strengths that you bring. So you don't want to know about weakness. You don't want to know about areas for development. All you're doing is you're going out to others for a little 360 and you're saying, can you share with me a word or a short phrase to describe a strength that I have, that you feel that I bring? The next thing is understanding what experience you've got, the real experience that you've got as an individual, the value that you bring. Be clear about it and celebrate it and be present in it. Don't apologize for it. Do not be apologetic for strength. And then the final element to help you understand your why is uniqueness. And that uniqueness comes from your private self and it comes from your values and your purpose. What are the things that motivate me? What are the things that I love doing? Where are the places I love being? What is the song that I want to sing before I clock out, right? You know, it's thinking about all these wonderful things. And if we can get an understanding of how others perceive our strengths, then we can assess congruency and alignment. If we can dig into and understand our value contribution through the strengths and experience and competencies we've got, it gives us courage and resilience. And if we can think about those uniquenesses that are more private to us in terms of purpose, moonshot, and inner motivations, and the loves and likes and desires that we have in life, we can make our unique mark, our love mark, as Kevin Roberts would say from Saatchi's and Saatchi's. That's our love mark. And that's how we can travel the journey to know our why. We should be doing this by default. If you haven't done this by default, please, I encourage you to do so. And if you would like a copy of the brand triangle, then just email me, just let me know, pop it into the chat. It is an incredibly important thing for all of us to do. And get your teams doing it. Give it to your teams. Get it across your teams. Everybody needs to understand their own identity and their own why, because that will give them courage, that will give them congruency, that will give them connection to the transformation that they're in. And if you're really brave and if you're really down the track in deployment of transformation, then what you do is you get it out to the entire system and get the entire system to be exploring and understanding their why. Now, another way of working on attention management is, of course, taking back control in terms of how. Know your why. Second bit, take back control. And there's an internal element and an external element. And all I'm saying here is assess and then put some tiny little steps towards it. So this really is about assessing. So your internal world is mind, body, heart, and soul. We've talked about it. Think about it. Where are you? Give yourself a score out of 10 for mind, for body, for heart, for soul. Think about these 4 dimensions in your journaling, or maybe over a 2-week period. Reflect back and see where you're at. Have you got a weak point? Have you got a strength point? What little tiny things can you do to get balance and alignment across those 4 areas? And then on the right-hand side is external. And external is, the things that you might think are not in our control, but the things that I've got in here are in your control. Your place, the place that you work, what does it look like? Does it support productivity? Does it support presence? Does it support your ability to prioritize? In terms of, the software you've got on your computer, in terms of, do you have a plant that can take some oxygen around so that the air around you is purer? Does it feel good? Have you got some stuff that are motivational around you or on your desk? Lorraine, I'm looking at you. I know you do have some motivational things on your desk. It's really, really important for us to think about the place and the space and the tech that we're using to take control of it and to understand that. And I think one of the things as well is there's a time and a place for tech. That wee little mobile phone that we take with us everywhere, that always on mentality that we seem to be adopting as managers and workers in this modern world is not correct. It really isn't correct. So thinking about using our technology in, when is it right to put silence on? When is it right to put that phone into a different room? For example, don't have your phone in the bedroom. Don't have any tech in the bedroom. You want to have a really good night's sleep, because that will build your energy in mind, body, heart, and soul. So just thinking about the tech is a really, really important element. Maura Thomas, in particular, gives you some fantastic tips and hints about how you can increase your tech productivity and other bits around the external space. So thinking about taking back control internally and externally, super important. Final bit, practice makes progress. This is what we're going to be talking about in one of our weekly moments coming up in the next few weeks. It's really habitual, right? Everything that I've talked about today in terms of focus, priority, presence, productivity, everything I've talked about today in terms of energy, mind, heart, body, soul, all of these things, as soon as we've assessed and started taking action so that we can take back control of these areas to build attention management, what we want to do then is get them straight into the world of habit. Because when we start doing something consciously, it's in the 55% of our conscious action. And that's fine, but it's ripe for distraction, right? At any given moment, something else could come along and steal it. So what we want to do is, when we are creating something that is really good for our attention management, as quickly as we possibly can, we want to be taking it over to that world of habit, creating those neural pathways. It means that we are consciously, we're unconsciously doing it as opposed to consciously doing it. So we want to be unconsciously competent when it comes to attention management. So measuring all of these things is what's really important. And it's just, what I've popped up on the slide here is just thinking about, your formula for attention management: focus plus energy equals attention. How well do you know your why underneath focus and energy? Where are you in control? Where could you take back control? And if you are feeling that you are in control of something, is it consciously still? Is it still in the conscious area? Could you be doing some work to shift something over into the world of habit? So thinking about that. So just looking at this particular table that I've got up here is a really great way for you to start thinking about assessing and to exploring your attention management and developing it. There you go. That's a little bit about attention management for everybody today. We've got a few minutes to talk about questions, roundtables, thoughts, etc., etc. But nothing would be anything without Mel giving you a couple of banana skins, right? So what are the banana skins for this week when it comes to attention management? Don't trick yourself. You know, I see this all the time, that people trick themselves into thinking that they're okay. Don't. Be realistic. Take 5 minutes out and think about it. It's so incredibly important that you don't trick yourself when it comes to attention management. You might think you've got it, but you haven't when you've already answered, you know, yes to 3 or more of what I had on the original list. And the other thing is don't settle for mediocre. Just because the word heart and soul sound a little bit ooh when it comes to work, that doesn't mean that they're not serious, and it doesn't mean that they're incredibly important elements of successful work, business, organizational transformation, and certainly your own leadership development and growth and personal and professional growth. Don't settle for mediocre. This stuff is serious. This stuff has got a lot of science behind it, and it's really important for us to give ourselves due time and attention to it. So those are the banana skins for today. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to stop sharing, just giving the quantum tips here. Don't worry, they will be on slides. If you'd like the slides, just take them away. But come on, you know, I've said it, haven't I? You know what I'm going to say about quantum tips today. Focus on yourself first. You got to have it before you give it. You know, you really have got to have it before you give it, because that's where your confidence comes from, and people will follow your confidence, right? Weaving everything that I've said today is possible and should be part of your transformation design. And, you know, when you talk about attention management, when you talk about, you know, helping leaders to buy back time, helping leaders to be a little bit more productive just by doing 1 or 2 tiny little things, Jiminy Cricket, that's a great way to bring leaders that you might have a challenge with on the journey of transformation, to get them to engage with it. So it's absolutely 2 great quantum tips. So there we go. That is a whistle-stop tour of attention management. So I'm going to come. I've got everybody back in the room now. So the slides are down, the cuffs are off. Where are we? What's resonated with everybody? What one thing resonated with you? And are there any questions for me? We've got a minute or 2.
Hi, Mel. As I always journal, both with the intention for the day and then reflecting, but I love this nugget you've given to really focus the journaling. I think I'm definitely going to take that away to question that daydream, that distraction, and that focus. So yeah, I love that one. It's just going to make me rethink about my journaling and just put it in a different dimension. So thanks. That's what I'm going to take away today from you.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Joanna. That's great. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Any questions? Lorraine?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mel, that the bit that you said, sorry, the dog is growling at me in the background. I don't know if you can hear her.
Can't hear a thing.
She's wanting out, so she's... I'll let her out in a minute. Yeah, the bit that really resonated was that bit about, you said about the technique to go and grab a book, 5 random words. And I love that, because yesterday, honestly, Daisy, stop it. I was honestly, you know, trying to, just like you said, trying to get something out my head. And I just couldn't find the right words or the right pictures, because I like sometimes just to draw things and then translate it. And I thought, you know what, I am absolutely going to try that today. So thank you. Every day's a school day with you, Mel.
I love it. That's brilliant. And you know, it's so important, because what you're describing there, Lorraine, is, you know, back to taking action, right? You know, when we have a thought, that means that progress and success comes to us, but it's only with action do we receive it, right? And that is a quote, and it's a beautiful quote, and I take that to heart. I can think something, which means that, you know, it comes to me, but I can only really succeed if I act upon it. So thinking about how we can move to action really, really quickly, especially when we're stuck, is so incredibly important. So that's brilliant. Thank you. Cool. Well, ladies, thank you so much. There you go. Well, I'm going to hang around for a few minutes. So if anybody would like to ask a question, or if there's something else that you'd like to talk about, then please do hang around. But otherwise, I would say happy Wednesday. Have a great day and rest of the week. We're going to be back next week with another weekly moment. We're going to be talking about another element of humanizing transformation, either you, your team, or the system around you. So have a great week. And until then, just think about your 3 brain states.
Thank you.
See you,
Bye-bye.
ladies. Bye-bye.